Hi, everyone, and we are done with week 10 of the college football season. We had a really great weekend of college football. Not a ton of enormous upsets that you couldn't believe what was actually going on, but still some really high quality games, some close finishes, things that you needed to watch all the way until the end. But that doesn't mean that there aren't any big ranking shifts that are going to happen due to what we saw over the last few days. So, without further ado, let's go into the final predictions of the Rankings Right Now algorithm on rankingsrightnow.com. So, here we are on rankingsrightnow.com, free for everyone to sign up. You can play around with the What If simulation tool. Go ahead and subscribe to our weekly analysis newsletter. It gives you more in-depth details, more information that's coming into your pocket all the time. Here we are on our final top 25 predictions. Now, a couple of things to just immediately dive right into, okay? You see there's not a ton of movement up top, but there is a slight change with Miami and Texas flip-flopping. Why would that be? Well, according to the algorithm, Miami could have really beaten Florida State completely blindfolded today, right? I don't think anyone is doubting that whatsoever, right? So let's just move that off to the side. Even though people are starting to give Vanderbilt a little bit more credit than they were earlier in the year. Remember, Mizzou barely beat Vanderbilt in a overtime thriller where the Vanderbilt kicker didn't even come close to kicking a overtime field goal, was aiming for Seattle instead of Columbia, Missouri, right? Now that people are starting to respect them a little bit more after their wins against Alabama and Kentucky, the model is still saying, hey, if Texas is really a top 5 team, then they shouldn't be playing it close with the number 25 ranked team in the country. That should be a much bigger blowout than a margin of 3 victory. So the algorithm is saying that Miami is favored to move up to number 5, and Texas is poised to drop down to number 6. Another big one that we saw, Texas A&M looked great against LSU, right? And I think even the score, if we go ahead and find that game, a 15-point win, it felt like A&M dominated the entire second half of that game. So that's a big jump for Texas A&M. LSU drops down to 20. Excuse me. I think that's a little too aggressive of a drop of 12. We rarely see anything greater than 7 or 8, especially with those top teams. So I would expect something in the 14 to 18 range for where LSU is going to drop down to. But we'll also look in the College Football Selection Committee poll here in a minute of where that might happen. But for example, to stay on this trajectory, you now have a lot of representation in this top 10 of the Big Ten and the SEC, right? You have Big Ten, SEC, Big Ten, ACC, SEC, ACC, and then another a Big 12, I guess. So there's still so much that's going on within that top 10. That's a big fight. And then when you get to 11, things start to get interesting again. Alabama over BYU, Notre Dame, and Indiana. And before I get all of the people down my back saying, hey, why are you doing this with the SEC bias? There is no bias here. We have to look at it from a paper view of what actually happened today. So let's take a look at what Alabama did. Alabama wins 34-0. They throw a shutout against the number 21 team in the country, right? Mizzou's obviously been struggling. Maybe they were ranked a little too high to start off the year, but according to the poll, that is where they were ranked, number 21. So 15 beats 21, 34-0, right? An enormous win. Let's go ahead and shift our right on over to BYU. BYU, which was somehow the underdog in this game, and I still don't understand why, they take care of business against UCF. They beat a unranked sub 500 team by 13, right? So now you have unranked, win by 13, ranked, win by 34, and give up 0 points, right? Alabama looks like the better team on today. Now you go down to Notre Dame and Navy. When you have Notre Dame and Navy, that's an enormous win, right? Number 12 beats a ranked team, but a lower ranked team, and completely dominates them. So the only one, and then lastly, let's go look at Indiana. Indiana, 13, beating a unranked, not what they were last year, UW team, and won by, let's see, that's 14. Once again, it's hard to make the argument here that Alabama did not look better than all of those teams. Maybe you can make an argument for Notre Dame. But as of right now, the algorithm says, hey, that was a conference opponent, a shutout, and a large margin of victory. They have them moving up to 11, which moves BYU down 1, Notre Dame down 1, and Indiana down 1, even though all three of those teams won that game. So I'm very interested to see where the AP poll is actually going to release that, and how close the rankings right now algorithm will be to making to that 10 to 15 area and where everything lies, right? Pitt had a great win against Syracuse. Boise State's always looking good. Kansas State had a thriller against KU. They stay there. Probably if they wanted to move up a little bit more, they're going to have a more convincing win against a KU team who's really struggled this year, right? And then you have the 21 through 25 this week looks rough. I will admit it. Army, maybe. Tulane, Memphis, Minnesota, I don't know, right? That kind of has me a little bit hesitant, right? Minnesota has 3 losses. Memphis has been competitive all year. Tulane's only losses are to Kansas State and Oklahoma, and both of those games, they kept it close. I think Tulane deserves a little bit of credit and should get some votes. I don't think it's going to be 22. Same thing with Memphis. Memphis has a really good year. Their really, I think, maybe only loss was against Navy. Navy's now out. Memphis is rolling. You can make an argument. Minnesota's looked good. They had a really good game against USC a couple weeks ago that really propelled them into a closer action into that top 25. But I don't think a lot of people are on top of USC right now. If we use the what if simulation tool and really look at if USC would have won a couple more games, does that Minnesota record look a lot better? Yes. But as of right now, that seems like a little bit of a stretch, and I don't believe any of these teams received any votes in the AP Top 25. That will be something that we alter in the offseason for the AP model, is looking at 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 that we're getting in the AP voting. That's going to make the algorithm a little bit better. The main algorithm was based off of the College Football Selection Committee, and that was what it was originally trying to predict. And so with the committee, you don't know anything after 26. So that'll be a change that we make, and we'll make the AP algorithm a little bit better. We have a couple of other things that we're going to try and do in the off season to improve these algorithms. And, you know, the better the algorithm is, the more interesting it will be for you, the fan, and make your college football Saturday even better. So real quick, before we hop off, right, let's go ahead and play around with the simulation tool a little bit. With the what if simulation tool, you can make sure that you're on the right algorithm that you're interested in. So make sure that for this case, we're going to be interested in the AP Top 25 rankings. Go ahead and click the season data button. For example, if we just wanted to see what would happen if Vandy won this game 30-27, right? Made a nice little comeback at the end, maybe sent it to overtime, whatever the case may be. Let's run the simulation. If that would have been the case, it's a very big question where Texas would have landed, right? According to the algorithm, Texas would have dropped down to number 9. Vandy is up to 15 with that if they would have had a win today, right? That would have been a crazy ride with Vandy going the rest of the season, getting real close to the College Football Selection Committee's top 12 teams, making a run maybe at the conference championship game. I don't know, but you know, that would have been a real mix-up to be interested in. So any game that you think that, hey, what if it would have gone the other way? There weren't too many this week, but please use the what if simulation tool. You can change any of these games. Let's just do another one real quick. Kansas State had a really sweet field goal at the very end. Let's say they don't make that field goal and they lose to an unranked KU who's really struggled this week. Let's go ahead and run that simulation and see what would happen. Kansas State drops down to 23. That changes things. That almost ends their season. That's a long way to get up into that top 12. So that's a big change. They're still competitive. They're still in there right now, but that loss to KU would have potentially knocked them out. So the last thing that I want to bring up before we sign off here. Right now, or I should say, this is the last week that we really need to pay attention to the AP poll. Starting next week, so week 10 games, at the end of week 10, we are going to get the AP release, which we can just see how well the AP model is doing. But even more importantly, and even more interestingly, what is the College Football Selection Committee going to look like? They're going to release their first poll. No one knows what they're thinking, but we have algorithms that are trained on their historical data predictions that might be able to help give us some insights into what they're thinking. So if we look at the committee rankings that would be predicted if they were to give a release this week, what would it look like? Here is what it has, and it is a little bit different than what the AP poll has right now. For example, Texas is predicted to be number 3 right now, right? Oregon, Georgia, Texas. I don't think anyone has a problem with that. Penn State looked okay against Wisconsin today. They dropped 1. Ohio State's at 5, right? You have Miami and Tennessee that are still up there. Notre Dame is way higher in the college football rankings than you see on the AP poll. That's interesting. Texas A&M up to that 8-9 spot like we see on the AP poll. BYU's ahead of Clemson and Iowa State, right? Indiana's at 13 and Bama's at 14, right? If you remember, Bama was all the way up until 11 on the AP poll. They're not that high. They're out of the college football playoff according to this algorithm that we see right here. LSU isn't at 20, they're at 16. Still a big drop, but not nearly as big as we've seen across, right? Pitt's still in there. Ole Miss is still in there. Kansas State, right? Maybe dropping a little bit because they don't have a good game against KU. SMU's in there. So the teams line up very well, right? Mizzou's still barely in there. Louisville is snuck in. As we mentioned, Memphis is still competitive. You see Navy and Vanderbilt still in the discussion. So if we go ahead and extend this to all teams, we can see a couple of other teams that might be in the mix. CU as of right now, and I think their game is currently going. We're filming this late at night on Saturday, but they have a pretty decent sized lead right now. CU's in that conversation. Wazoo's in that conversation. James Madison with a really big UNC win earlier this year. They had a bad loss 2 weeks ago, but they're still competitive. Syracuse looked terrible. Maybe 32. I don't know, right? Nebraska, USC, Arizona State. You have a bunch of these teams that are on the outside of the top 25, but really what we care about is this top 12, probably all the way to 20, right? All of this area is going to be the real tight who's going to make that college football playoff coming here soon. So go ahead, play around with these predictions. You can see where things are going to be going. A fun weekend. Every weekend's been great. There hasn't been a bad weekend of college football besides those first, 2 or 3 weeks where nothing really happens. But, lately it's been great. The matchups are great. There's great stuff every week. We'll go ahead and see you again when we release when the AP poll releases their results. We'll do our head-to-head comparison that we've done every single week. That's our transparency to show you what our algorithm is doing, how well it's been trained, where it's weak, where it's strong. And I think overall, for the first year of this AP algorithm, it was a really big success, really exciting, really cool. There's obvious flaws that we're going to go ahead and fix, but overall, the objective of what rankings right now is supposed to be is to help enhance the college football experience and to give you, the fan, quicker insight into where teams are going to be ranked. And you can say all you want that rankings don't matter, but everyone is focused on them. Everyone loves them. It gives pride to school. It's important to the discussion around college football. So, excited to turn this one off and turn the College Football Selection Committee one on. It should be a fun rest of the way. Thank you for your support, and I create a free login, subscribe to our free newsletter, and we'll see you again here soon.